Kevin McCarthy defends releasing the January 6th tapes to Tucker Carlson, while our friends to the left go to try to find anything bad that Tucker Carlson has ever said once about Donald Trump to try to discredit the narrative. So we'll be talking about the narrative push, where this goes from here, and what they're trying to reshape everything to at this point now that reasonable doubt has been introduced into what they want you to believe about everything that's going on with this. In other news, Biden's budget calls for a billionaires tax as our Senate and House of Representatives look for ways to cut almost $20 trillion from spending, while Biden agrees to cut $3 trillion. So we'll be going over that and what that means and where that goes. Louisville has been put into a position where their police have repeatedly violated civil rights, according to the Justice Department, and the mayor strikes back against the DOJ for their accusations. And in government officials behaving badly, Elizabeth Warren decides that she is in favor of the push to change the Massachusetts flag to end its white supremacy. It is going to be all this and more. I was the one flying the balloon. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Well, that was embarrassing. Well, we're back. Yeah, I did that one. That's a mistake that I made because I don't hear myself through here. Otherwise, it rings back in my ears. Well, we'll stick with where we're at right now because we'll talk about where the numbers were when we get to the Dow. The gas prices in the Madison area are staying steady right now, with $3.40 being the high price still. Our gas prices here in La Crosse went up another 10 cents, so that's where we're at right now. But otherwise, not a lot of move going on there, so I do hope that you were able to go back and get your gas topped off before the gas prices rose where you were. Let's see what CNBC has to say. We have no IBD today, so we'll go with CNBC. Dow finishes slightly lower as traders consider a faster Fed tightening cycle, from Samantha Subin and Hakyung Kim. The Dow finished slightly lower Wednesday as the market fought to overcome Tuesday's sell-off spurred by comments from the Federal Reserve Chairman, Jerome Powell, hinting at higher interest rates for longer. The Dow dipped 58.06 points, or 0.18, to end at 32,798.40, while the S&P edged 0.14% higher to settle at 39,92.01. The Nasdaq rose 0.4 to finish at 11,576. Fresh job market data fueled investor concern that bigger rate increases may be ahead. Data showed that job openings fell less than expected in January, while a stronger than expected February private payrolls report affirmed that the economy is standing strong despite the central bank's hiking. The findings precede Friday's February jobs data after January's blockbuster number. Stocks were coming down off a session after comments from Powell's Senate testimony cautioned lawmakers that the central bank's terminal rate will likely be higher than previously anticipated due to stubbornly high economic data. Commentary continued on Wednesday as Powell spoke before the House Financial Services Committee. It just raises the idea that they may have more to do, said Kathy Bostjancic, chief economist at Nationwide. The fact that they're even willing to rev it up introduced the idea that they wow, I can read today. I'm still flustered over the fact that I went for 5 minutes with no voice. Introduces the idea even more so that they make a policy mistake, that this results in a hard landing for the economy. I don't think we have a choice at this point. Gas prices are going up, fuel is going up, energy prices are out of control. And something's got to give at some point. And I mean, the first section of what had to give gave when the job openings shrank, but not enough. We're getting to the point where layoffs are just not enough to go with that, and we'll be talking about the shrinkage in just a second here. So that's where we are at with the numbers. Let's grab one from CNBC, and then we will get into, or CNN rather, and then we'll get into the main news of the day. There is a slight chill running through the U.S. labor market, but the temperature is still too high for the Federal Reserve. The number of job openings in the U.S. fell to 10.8 million in January, down from an upwardly revised 11.23 million in December. The BLS reported on Wednesday as part of the monthly jobs openings and labor turnover survey, or JOLTS. The consensus estimate from economists was for 10.5 million available positions in January, according to Refinitiv. The January JOLTS report showed that hiring increased to 6.37 million, from 6.25 million. Layoffs surged to 1.72 million, which probably fueled the 6.37 million. And quits dropped to 3.89 million from 4.09 million, with a lot of people thinking, hey, if I've got the job and I'm at least somewhat secure, I should probably stick around. Those shifts point to a cooling labor market. However, the continued imbalance between worker supply and demand means the U.S. job market remained tight in January, and that's not what the Federal Reserve is looking for in its efforts to cool the economy. Could we see a 0.75 at the end of this month? I think it's within the realm of possibility. I don't know that it's going to happen, but I think it's within the realm of possibility at this point. While the January JOLTS report shows job openings are headed in the right direction for the Fed, the decline is far too modest to convince that the labor market conditions are cooling enough to bring down inflation, Oxford Economics economists wrote in a statement issued Wednesday. The Fed will put more weight on Friday's employment report, but signs continue to point towards quarter-point rate hikes at each of the next three Federal Open Market Committee meetings. I think it's going to be higher than that. I think that they could hit 3/4. I think 50 is most likely. I don't think they're going to go quarter. I really don't. But we'll see what happens with that. We've got to get into the main news of the day. Before we get into the Tucker stuff, we've got two people with F's in the chat we've got to talk about. Boy, those Norfolk Southern people, they can't catch a break. Holy crap, they can't catch a break. Dump truck collides with Norfolk Southern train, kills one, and where did it happen? Ohio. From Courtney Shaw. Police are investigating after a dump truck collided with a Norfolk Southern train in Cleveland early on Tuesday morning. The train was on the line that runs through Cleveland Cliffs, Cleveland Works property on West 3rd Street. According to police, the dump truck owned by TMS International was driving with a full load of limestone when it approached a stop sign of the railroad tracks at 0130. Police said that after the truck stopped, it proceeded to drive forward and collided with the front left side of the first train car. According to the spokesperson with Norfolk Southern, conductor Louis Schuster, 46, died as a result of the crash. CEO of Norfolk Southern, Alan Shaw, shared the following statement. One of our well-respected colleagues, Louis Schuster, was fatally injured overnight in a traffic accident on the job. This is an awful day that leaves a hole in our company's spirit. Moving forward, we're going to rebuild our safety culture from the ground up. We're going to invest more in safety. This is not who we are, it's not acceptable, and it will not continue. Norfolk Southern released the following statement on the crash. Norfolk Southern has been in touch with the conductor's family and will do all it can to support them and its colleagues. We're grieving the loss of a colleague today. Our hearts go out to his loved ones during this extremely difficult time. The company is working with the Cleveland Police Department and Cleveland Cliffs representatives to confirm the details and learn everything possible about the incident. Further, the company has been in contact with Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, Smart TD Union leadership, and Cleveland Cliffs leadership. If this had been any other rail line, I probably wouldn't be questioning this. And in fact, I'm going to tell you right now, I would probably be condemning the driver for being a godforsaken moron. If you are full to 76,000 pounds of limestone, well, 76,000 pounds combined truck and limestone weight. But if you are full to capacity of limestone, and you see the train coming, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, that truck, I don't know what kind of truck it was. I don't know what engine was in there. But what I'm telling you, even the most powerful 15-liter Caterpillar engine does not move that fast that if you see that train coming, that you're going to get out of its way in time. This is kind of my bread and butter. I know how this stuff works. I turned a wrench for 15 years. But with that being said, this is Norfolk Southern again in the news. I don't want to get really tinfoily on this program, but this is the third time in a month that an incident has caused a safety violation with Norfolk Southern, just a few months after Congress came together and forced the rail union to go back to work under penalty of law. And this is all happening in the same state. Something is messed up with Norfolk Southern. If this had been Canadian Pacific or BNSF or anybody else who operated this train, I would not have questioned this for a second. I have questions. I have a lot of questions. But that is what's happening in Cleveland. From the Hill. Former White House official dies after severe jet turbulence incident. What did the jet have on the Clintons? From Julia Shapiro. Oh, Ron says their safety training must really suck. I'm going to ask the question right off the bat. Could this have been a dump truck driver who was sent out to sabotage the train? I can't say that yes, that is what happened, but I have that question in my mind. Is that a possibility? A former White House official died on Friday after the business jet she was traveling on encountered severe turbulence. Dana Hyde, who served in both the Clinton and the Obama admins, was transported to a hospital in Hartford, Connecticut after her plane made an emergency landing at Bradley International Airport, according to Connecticut State Police. The NTSB, which is investigating the incident, said turbulence event resulted in fatal injuries. In an update on Monday, NTSB said investigators are looking at a reported trim issue that occurred prior to the in-flight upset. They will continue to learn more after they analyze information from the flight data recorder, cockpit voice recorder, and other sources of information like weather data, NTSB said in a tweet. Hyde was flying from DeLand Hopkins Airport in Keene, New Hampshire to Leesburg Executive Airport in Virginia with her husband and one of her two sons, after taking a trip to visit schools in New England, according to the Washington Post. Her husband and son, as well as two members of the flight crew, were not injured in the incident. Under President Obama, Hyde led the U.S. Foreign Aid Agency, known as the Millennium Challenge Corporation, and served as an associate director of the White House Office of Management and Budget. She also worked as a senior advisor in the State Department. Man, and it just happened to be that this weather incident put 2 pieces of 9mm shrapnel right into the back of the head of this official. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if this person had some dirt or knew something about Epstein or had been talking about going out and talking. But because this is a person who is associated with Clintons who died under mysterious circumstances and nobody else on the plane at all got hurt, injured, shaken up, or anything else, I have questions. I don't know if this is the case, but I have questions. All right. With that, we go talk about Tucker. And we are only going to talk about Tucker up until this Politico article. So we're not going all halfway across the stack like we were before. Let's get to it. Starting with Kevin McCarthy. Jack Posobiec tweets out, breaking. McCarthy defends Tucker release of January 6 tapes and slams CNN. So we'll listen to the video, and we've got a couple pieces of commentary about this. Let's listen.
Mr. Speaker, because of the footage that you gave Tucker Carlson last night, he went on and said this was a mostly peaceful chaos, as he said. He downplayed Brian Sicknick's death, said it was not related to January 6th, said this was not an insurrection. Do you regret giving him this footage so he could whitewash the events of that day?
No, I said at the very beginning, transparency. And so what I wanted to produce for everybody is exactly what I said, that people could actually look at it and see what's gone on that day. So.
But Mr. Speaker, would you agree with his portrayal of what happened that day?
Look, each person can come up with their own conclusion, but what I just wanted to make sure is I had transparency.
Do you believe
because I know in CNN, I mean, I had here where you guys actually broke where we were. This was a secret location, Fort McLaren. I don't know if you got concerned by that. I don't even know from point of view of security if we could ever be taken there again. But when you broke that at CNN, that was a real concern to a lot of people. I had a real concern also when I wanted to make sure transparency. Look, the officer's death is tragic, and anytime an officer is passed in this situation, I want to make sure they're protected. I want to make sure the transparency goes forward.
Speaker McCarthy,
was this in any way part of...
I kind of hate that one of the people who's yelling the questions is behind the camera that's recording this right now, because it's like, boom, right there. And I always wish that the people, the news reporters, when they put clips like this out, actually learn how to mix these things down so we don't get this blast in our ear. But, I mean, you've got... I see 3 people in front of me, which probably 4 or 5, 6 people that are out of frame here, that are all trying to yell questions at the same time over each other. So I do apologize for the bad mixing of this. But that is from Posobiec and not from here.
of the deal that you made to
No.
win the speakership,
No.
to specifically give the content to
No, the
Tucker?
answer is no. And if you follow, I'm not sure if you were there the times before, I got asked the question in a press, what I would do in the process. I've watched on January 6th committee how it was only politically driven. How on the January 6th committee, you couldn't, the minority side wasn't allowed to put people on. And I just thought it was fair, if someone asked me the question, just transparency. So what I tried to do is be able to release the information, which we'll do to everybody. I worked with the Capitol Police. I asked them for any clips on the way that they had concern with the security level. Only one of the clips did, and we were able to change that. An interesting thing the Capitol Police told us when we went through this is that January 6th never asked them about that, the security. So that's why they showed, unfortunately, Vice President Pence, when he was being escorted out, they used my office on the escort where he went out. They never asked the Capitol Police if that's showing security clearance that they shouldn't, which they didn't. They didn't ask me as well. I didn't.
So there's a lot to unpack with this, and we'll be talking just a bit about what is happening with that. But, I mean, with McCarthy, just the fact that he's out there and saying right out, hey, you guys showed one of our secret bunkers, unedited, and disclosed where that is. We might never be able to use that again. And he's got a great point with that. He really does. Reading from the Daily Wire, Kevin McCarthy defends releasing January 6 tapes, torches CNN reporter to his face. From Daily Wire News. Oops, that's not what I wanted. This is what I wanted. Speaker McCarthy slammed a CNN reporter during a brief interaction with reporters in which he answered questions about releasing footage from the January 6 riot at the U.S. Capitol to Fox News host Tucker Carlson. Because of the footage you gave to Tucker Carlson last night, he went on to say that this was a mostly peaceful chaos. As he said, he downplayed Brian Sicknick's death, and it was not said it was not related to January 6th, that this was not an insurrection. CNN's Manu Raju said, "Do you regret giving him those tapes so he could whitewash the events of that day?" No, at the beginning, I said at the very beginning, transparency. And so what I wanted to produce for everyone is exactly what I said. People can actually look at it and see what's going on that day. When asked if he agreed with Carlson's portrayal of the events that took place, McCarthy said each person can come up with their own conclusion. But I just wanted to make sure I had transparency, because I know on CNN, I mean, I had here where you guys actually wrote where we were. This was a secret location. I don't know if you got concerned by that. I don't even know from a point of view of security if we could ever be taken there again. But when you broke that at CNN, it was a real concern to a lot of people. Boom. And I mean, Manu Raju is never going to be objective. We read from Manu Raju all the time. He's never going to be an objective reporter. He has a narrative to push, and a lot of what we're seeing with this is people with a narrative to push, with a certain story to tell the people, and they're not even being transparent about it, or opaque about it. They're being openly transparent. We will skip over the Blaze one because that appears to be the same article. Let's grab one from the Associated Press. Posts misrepresent rioters' actions at January 6th Capitol attack. Here comes the cope. From Melissa Golden. Claim footage from the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol shows that Jacob Chansley, who participated in the Selfie Fest, sporting face paint, no shirt, and a fur hat with horns, was led through the Capitol by police the entire time he was in the building. The Associated Press's assessment. Surprise, surprise. Fools! Court documents and video footage from the attack on the Capitol make clear that Chansley, who is widely known as QAnon Shaman and is one of the most recognizable January 6th rioters, entered the Capitol without permission. You know, they don't put on there, they busted through a window, that he held a police officer at gunpoint, or he dangerously insurrected. He entered the Capitol without permission. was repeatedly asked to leave the building and was not accompanied at all times. The cope, I am telling you, the cope of all of this. But that's the thing that goes with this, is with the January 6th committee, with the videos that didn't get taken down from YouTube, from Twitter, from Instagram, etc. We were painted a picture where the only thing that we ever saw was violent insurrection. Was there violence that day? Sure. But the narrative is that anybody who got past the gates, other than Ray Epps, was violently attempting to overthrow the Capitol, when in reality, there is enough reasonable doubt to say that the majority of people were just in there confused, wandering around, wondering what happened and how they managed to get into the Capitol and what to do next. I am not saying, and I said this yesterday, that this is the death nail that destroys the narrative of January the 6th. But there's enough reasonable doubt that the accusation and the conviction that the January 6th panel comes up with would be thrown out of any other court. Midget P, right on the nose. Mr. Q Shaman, sir, would you mind please not insurrecting? Would you please exit the building, sir? No? Well, okay, I guess. Thank you, Midget B. Let's see. Footage from the interaction, which appears in the documentary at the approximately 47:30 mark, was filmed by New Yorker writer Luke Muggleson. Any chance I can get you guys to leave the Senate wing? The officer says as Chansley sits with the president. I can't believe, especially with that being on, with what Midget had just said as well. Legitimately, next thing in the AP article. Any chance I can get you guys to leave the Senate wing? That's like almost word for word what Midget B put on. Oh, that's great. So, that's what the Associated Press has to say. From Forbes, some more cope for you. Tucker Carlson is not credible. White House lashes out against Fox News for January 6 tapes. From Sarah Dorn over at Forbes on the staff. The White House sharply condemned Fox News host Tucker Carlson's depiction of the January 6th Capitol Selfie Fest on Wednesday, marking the first time the Biden admin has spoken out against the segments in a statement that attacked the conservative pundit's credibility, as lawmakers from both parties push back against Carlson. The White House sided with a partisan coalition. I know they keep throwing that bipartisan word around there, but even though they were able to go from different parties, nobody who voted against the prosecution of Trump in Impeachment 2 Electric Boogaloo was allowed to sit on the committee. Bipartisan. A group joined by Capitol Police Chief Thomas Manger, who called the Fox News host claims offensive and misleading. The White House agrees with what Fox News' own attorneys and executives have now repeatedly stressed in multiple courts of law, that Tucker Carlson is not credible. Biden spokesperson Andrew Bates said in this statement, referencing a defamation suit against Carlson, that Fox News lawyers pushed back on by arguing not everything Carlson says is intended to be taken literally. Biden also personally spoke out against the Carlson in a tweet following the White House statement on Wednesday that asked, where am I? Jill, what was I supposed to be saying? Oh, okay. I see the teleprompter now. How dare anyone diminish or deny what the hell they went through? referencing Capitol Police who responded to the riots. More on this from Politico. White House goes after Tucker Carlson by name over the January 6th coverage. Ooh, by name! Co-parter. From Christopher Cadelago. The White House joined in widespread condemnation of Fox News' Tucker Carlson on Wednesday, singling out the primetime ratings king for his misleading portrayal of the U.S. Capitol riot on January 6th. In comments shared first with Politico, the White House joined Republican Senate leaders and Capitol Police Chief Tom Manker, who a day earlier assailed Carlson's broadcasts of selected assault footage for being filled with offensive and misleading conclusions. Kind of like the January 6th Unselect Committee. We agree with the Chief of Capitol Police and the wide range of bipartisan lawmakers who have condemned this false depiction of the unprecedented violent attack on our Constitution and the rule of law, which cost police officers their lives, even though no police officers died that day. White House spokesperson Andrew Bates said. We also agree with what Fox News' own attorneys and executives have now repeatedly stressed in multiple courts of law: Tucker Carlson's not credible. Among the legal filings Bates cited were remarks made by Fox News lawyers and a federal judge in the SDNY in defending Carlson against allegations of slander in an earlier lawsuit brought by Karen McDougal. The former Playboy model had accused Fox of defamation over a Carlson episode on her on December of 2018. Oh look, another defamation suit, and another defamation suit, and another defamation suit. Oh wow! It's almost like they've got a political end. What else do we have? From the USA Today. Tucker Carlson and the January 6 tapes deepen Trump divide between McConnell and McCarthy. From Candy Woodall. Now, McConnell and McCarthy, by the way, Candy, are still cut from the same cloth. They're still, for the most part, the same uniparty, war pig shill. The difference between McConnell and McCarthy is that McCarthy knows that if he steps out of line with the more conservative wing of his party, he's out on his ass. And McConnell can somehow come back in and save himself from losing power over and over and over again. Fox News host Tucker Carlson's airing of footage from the Capitol attack on January 6 has deepened the fissures between two key Republican leaders, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and Senate Minority Leader Mitch the Turtle Man McConnell. McCarthy has faced mounting pressure this week after giving Carlson more than 41,000 hours of video footage from the insurrection. Some of that pressure has come from U.S. Capitol Police Chief Tom Manker and McConnell. The speaker defended giving the security camera footage to Carlson as an act of transparency, telling reporters that he was providing an opportunity for people to see what went on that day. Manker, McConnell, and other critics say Carlson has falsely depicted what happened on January 6th by describing it as mostly peaceful chaos. The Capitol Police Chief said Carlson's conclusions were offensive and misleading. They do the same cope when they start to lose the narrative in any other case. It's a prosecution thing. They want to run out and cry foul anytime that there's reasonable doubt brought forward. It's prosecutoritis. What McConnell said about McCarthy and the Tucker tapes, we watched that yesterday. It was a mistake, in my view, for Fox News to depict this in a way that's completely at variance with what our chief law enforcement officials here at the Capitol think. The Minority Leader didn't answer whether it was a mistake for McCarthy to give Carlson access to the tapes. My concern was how it was depicted, which is a different issue, McConnell said. We already read about what the White House has said. McConnell and McCarthy show different approaches to former President Trump. The top two Republicans in Congress have long taken different approaches to January 6th and Trump's election. I'm not going to say that word. That preceded the deadly insurrection. There's so much editorializing in this, it's not even funny. That's partially because of different political realities in the House and Senate. McCarthy, who has a more raucous and further right flank to manage, sought Trump's approval during the midterms and in his bid for Speaker. In fact, it was a phone call on the House floor from Marjorie Taylor Greene to Trump that helped McCarthy clinch the speakership on the 15th round of voting. McConnell, meanwhile, has publicly lambasted the former president and said there is no question Trump was practically and morally responsible for provoking the January 6th selfie fest, but he did vote to acquit Trump after the House impeached him. That was political, by the way. Also, McConnell said in recent months has described Trump as diminished in power after many of his political picks and proteges lost in the midterms. Honk honk. McConnell noted that he would seek more qualified candidates to back in 2024 Senate races. That's not entirely true, by the way. The big difference between McConnell and McCarthy, it is political, and they're half right. But if there was a more uniparty approach in the House, there was a more uniparty situation in the House, McCarthy would be, you'd be able to close your eyes and listen to both men speak, and with the exception of the massive speech impediment that Mitch McConnell has from half of his face being paralyzed from polio, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the two men. Plain and simple, period. They would be saying the exact same talking points, and we would just be accepting the January 6th narrative that was put forward by Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney. Well, we'd be forced to. Most of us wouldn't accept it, but that would be what the mainstream media would be shoving down our throats. That was a poor choice of word to say we'd be accepting. So, that is what they have for that. From Slate. I know this is why Midget B is here. Because I put this is in topic chat in the Discord, by the way, so if you guys are not in the Discord, get there. The link it's in the description on YouTube and DLive, and the chatbot on Twitch is bringing it through every once in a while. Get in the Discord if you want to discuss this. This is gold. This is peak cope right here. Slate. Tucker Carlson lost. The January 6th committee won. I have not pre-read this, but I've seen select quotes from this, from the Discord, because I put this in two different Discords. And I think the people in both Discords came up with the same conclusion. From Mark Joseph Stern. On Monday, Tucker Carlson used his popular primetime program in an effort to undermine the work of last year's House Unselect Committee on the January 6th Selfie Fest by presenting footage that he claimed would cast its conclusions into serious doubt. It was a flop. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy gave Carlson more than 40,000 hours of video footage from that day. And the Fox News host used it to make the case that the vast majority of rioters were in fact peaceful sightseers, smeared through guilt by association with a few bad apples. But to all but the most committed or deluded MAGA devotees, Carlson's effort failed. A growing number of Republican lawmakers, including Mitch McConnell, Mitt Romney, Tom Tillis, Mike Rounds, Kevin Cramer, Lindsey Graham, Chuck Grassley, and Joni Ernst, have condemned the push to rewrite history. The episode quickly became a subject of widespread mockery and scorn, apparently failing to gain even an iota of traction among the Trump-skeptical conservatives it was designed to entice. Where are you getting the fact that this was designed to entice Trump-skeptical conservatives? These people already have their minds made up. Trump is guilty because of his association association of the crime of defeating the Uniparty, Trump is guilty. No matter what the crime you bring forward to him, it's just like the people who say, we got him this time. Oh, they're opening an investigation to him. He's going to jail. In the minds of people that Slate is describing, Trump was already guilty. They're just trying to find the crime. This reaction is, of course, good news for American democracy, Democrat hegemony. It shows that the party, which theoretically stands to gain from downplaying January 6th, is sharply divided on that strategy, with some leaders sharply rejecting it. And we cannot underestimate the impact of Carlson's recently revealed text. We'll be talking about that next. Expressing contempt for the former president, which puts his shameless duplicity on full display. What's also worth reflecting on the massive, perhaps decisive role that the January 6th committee played in inoculating Americans against the whitewashing of the insurrection. For months, it's been difficult to articulate what precisely the committee accomplished. What precisely did the committee accomplish? We were given a legal proceeding that represented in every single aspect of itself a legal trial without being a legal trial. And trust me, if you even bring up the idea of a cross-examination, there is a host of moronic blue pill leftoids who will come back out and tell you that it wasn't a trial. Hold on, I have got one for that. I mean, this was just too perfect. Hold on. So this was commenting on somebody, and I didn't catch the comment on it. I screen capped it just because of to have the juxtaposition there. But this was commenting on somebody. I was commenting on somebody who was talking about, again, the fact that there was no cross-examination, there were no witnesses to the counter, there was nothing else brought to that. It was all coming from one side. And I said, in before the Biden bots with the, it's not a trial routine. This guy, Radio Video, could not help himself. If you've got the kids in the room, earmuffs, it's earmuffs time. And you can already see it on the screen, so earmuffs. Radio Video could not help himself but comment, "It wasn't a trial, you dumb fuck!" To which I had to come back and say, yeah, that routine. There are 75 billion leftoids out there who will remind you, if you try to bring up the idea of a cross-examination, that this wasn't a trial. I can't believe this guy did that. He went right. I asked, and I've not got a positive response on whether or not this was satire. I asked if this was satire, the fact that he did that. Going back to the Slate article. Anyway, for months it's been difficult to articulate what precisely the committee has accomplished. Its criminal referrals remain up in the air. Its Republican co-chair lost her seat to a MAGA-oriented primary challenger, and it is now the subject of a cynical investigation by the new House GOP majority, eagerly ready to discredit its work, which needs to be discredited. This is not North Korea or the Soviet Union. This is not bring me the man and I will find you the crime. All of which raises the question, what good did any of it do? Carlson inadvertently gave us the answer. The January 6th committee provided the nation with a definitive account of the violence that day, providing critical background information, a blow-by-blow account of the inciting acts, a tic-tac of the riot itself, and a lengthy epilogue to covering the players' reactions. In short, the committee served as a prosecutor, laying out the strongest case against the offenders with such force and clarity that the most casual viewer could easily grasp it. Well, you see, and this is what Slate won't tell you. Number one, they will tell you that this is what they want trials to be in the future. All prosecution. Just like I said, you bring me the man and I find you the crime. No countervalence, no defense witnesses, no defense testimony, nothing. All prosecution. When these people tell you who they are, believe them. That's why most of our trials have moved to trial by social media, because the courts actually have to work within the framework of the Constitution. But what Tucker did, and again, I don't think that there's a slam dunk case to say that there's malice or evil. I would have to see more of what Tucker has to present, and he does intend to present more, but just the initial, and like I said yesterday when we watched, because we sat and watched the entire 10-minute clip from Tucker Carlson tonight. The entire initial clip, and I said right at the beginning, we could take all of Tucker Carlson's commentary out of this. This would be a 3-minute video, and this would cast enough reasonable doubt into the narrative that any judge and jury would have to find this unless they were hopelessly prejudiced, at which point they shouldn't have been seated in the first place. But unless they were hopelessly prejudiced, enough reasonable doubt that you would at least have a hung jury, if not a not guilty, by reasonable doubt. And there's more to come. But that is what Slate wants you to believe. And now the last of the cope. From the New York Times, 5 times Tucker Carlson has privately reviled Trump. I hate him! Documents released in recent weeks as part of a $1.6 billion defamation suit against Fox News by Dominion has revealed extraordinary private communications. Just coincidentally, of course, and depositions from the network's star hosts and executives in these statements. Many of them expressed disbelief about President Trump's false claims, editorialized, what's stolen from him, and editorialize, regardless of the outcome of the case, which is scheduled to go on trial in April. One host in particular, Tucker, appears to have a tricky road to navigate with his audience. In his private messages, Mr. Carlson, who generally provides strong support of Republicans on air, repeatedly showed contempt for Mr. Trump and some of his closest aides. To which the New York Times goes back out and highlights them. Here we got Alex Pfeiffer. Trump has a pretty low rate of success with his business ventures. Tucker. Well, that's for sure. All of them fail. What he's good at is destroying things. He's the undisputed world champion of that. On Trump's plan to skip Biden's inauguration, Carlson. I've heard about the inauguration. Hard to believe. So destructive. It's disgusting. I'm trying to look away. Between Carlson and Laura Ingraham. I had to try to make the White House disavow her, which they obviously should have done long before. Laura replies, no serious lawyer could believe what they were saying. Carlson. But they said nothing in public. Pretty disgusting. And now Trump, I learned this morning, is sitting back and letting them lose the Senate. He doesn't care. I care. And it goes on and on from there. But again, with the cope. And the cope is out there to try to turn the MAGA voter against Tucker Carlson so they won't believe what it is he's putting in there. I know the strategy they're trying to do with this. And I'm going to talk about this point blank. Nobody was harder on Trump that would still have voted for him, that did still vote for him the second time, than me. Remember, and you can go back, like if you go to the channel, youtube.com/JaredGirl101, and in the video section, because they changed how they set it up and the live streams are separate from the videos, you can go right in there. The top video, I think the top video is still the endorsement, or was it the student loans thing? I don't remember which one I did first. Hold on, I'm going to check my own work. Because now I'm second guessing myself. Okay, it's the second video. Not the first one. It's a 20-minute video. Bring this over here for you here. And my video was, I've endorsed Trump, kicking and screaming. We'll open this up for a second. Mute this. And note the date on this. October 28th, 2020. 6 days before the election in 2020. I did not decide to vote for John Trump until 6 days before the election. And a lot of what my final decision was the fact that he had endorsed a more 10th Amendment, more federalist system versus having government control, which his entire administration had suggested that he was in favor of, was more top-down federal government control. But I have called him on his spending. I can't call him on his womanizing because I'd be a hypocrite. I have called him on his divisiveness, on his tweets, on the Soleimani killing. There were a lot of problems with the Trump administration, and not the ones that the left had to make up, because the actual problems implicated their own people as well. There were actually legitimately a lot of problems with the Trump admin. And even a cursory view reveals that. But I still don't want to see him get railroaded without any form of defense. Because that's not how government works. That's a government that has way too much power and the ability to go after its political enemies to try to keep itself in power. And that's something that I think even Tucker has looked past. Now, do I think that Tucker is doing a lot of this for ratings? Oh, hell yes. Absolutely. 100%. He's a narcissist, just like anybody else who sits behind a camera. Present company included, by the way. But the fact that he can still have disagreements with Trump, with the way that he does things, and openly revile him, and still not want to see him get railroaded like this, says volumes about journalistic integrity and the ability to put your personal opinions aside and still seek out the truth rather than the narrative. All right, and the last one that we have on... Nope, I've got two more on this. The second to last one that we have on this, from the Daily Wire, it's appalling. Q Shaman's lawyer says DOJ lied, withheld videos aired by Carlson. From Luke Rosiak. An attorney for the so-called Q Shaman, Jacob Chansley, asked federal prosecutors repeatedly for all videos showing his clients inside the Capitol on January 6th, yet told the Daily Wire he never received the bombshell and potentially exculpatory footage aired on Monday night by Tucker Carlson. Albert Watkins, whose client Jacob Chansley pled guilty to felony charges in connection with the Capitol selfie fest and was sentenced to 41 months, said DOJ prosecutors were legally bound to turn over footage. Clips shown on Carlson's Fox News Channel program show Chansley walking freely and peaceably through the building, often accompanied by multiple police officers. "We did not receive that video footage," Watkins said. "We asked for it, and not just once or twice. Whether we asked for it or not is irrelevant, because the government had an absolute, not compromisable duty to disclose that video, and they did not do so. And all the while, they were actively representing the court and the American people that Jake was the leader, leading the charge into the Capitol," he said. "They did not disclose the footage because it ran contrary to their rote narrative." Well, see, the problem, Midget B, is they're unwilling to understand. They are willingly ignorant to the fact that this is happening the way that it's happening. They want it to be this way because they want to be able to use Big Daddy government against the people that they believe have wronged them. Watkins, an attorney for nearly 40 years, told the Daily Wire he was stunned to see the footage that which he could have used to defend Chansley. I've never seen anything so vile as what I'm seeing right now, he said. It's a departure from a pretty high standard that they maintained for a long time. Anyone who needs to have belief in the integrity of our justice system, whether they're a left-wing New England academic or a raging right-winger, needs to say this is really wrong and earmuffs. Fucking it up for everybody. Alright. There is another set to this, by the way. There's another side to this. And it goes parallel to something that I've been saying for a long time, that I've been saying since I first heard about the January 6th Selfie Fest in November of 2020, in late November of 2020. I've shared the story before. I had a coworker who told me, and by the way, this one thing I want to point out about what's happening with the January 6th narrative, the fact that we were all told that this was a dangerous attempt to go back and subvert American democracy, is the fact that right now we all have a PhD level of understanding of how the election process works after voting day, where Congress comes together and they vote to certify the election in a ceremonial procedure on January the 6th. And this happens every 4 years. But I would be remiss to find anybody who knew that prior to 2021 rather. Well, 2020, I guess, as well, because that's when they started talking about it. The assumption is just the TV man said that the person that they liked or didn't like won, and then the next thing you know, it's January 20th, and they're putting their hand on the Bible, and in Joe Biden's case saying, I promise to uphold the thing, man, and so help me that person that I'm gonna meet soon, because I'm not feeling so well, man. But there are a couple things that go with that. Number one, and I had a coworker who told me that he was going to be there for that day, that if they didn't overturn the election the way that he wanted, he was going to be with the American people, a mass of the American people in the Capitol, to go back and tell the government what they wanted, and they better do it, otherwise there's going to be bloodshed. And I said, Bob, there's going to be bloodshed no matter what. You're fish in a barrel at this point. And honestly, when I started hearing about the January 6th demonstration that was planned, I thought there was going to be a lot more bloodshed than just Ashley Babbitt. I thought it was going to be a fish in the barrel shootout from the National Guard. And I told him as much. I said, if you go to this, you will die. You will be deceased. They will shoot you indiscriminately. But one thing that was also pointed out to me last night that runs parallel to that is that where are all these people that are being arrested when they do finally get tried after sitting in solitary for 2 years or more? When they do finally get tried for this, where are they being tried? They're being tried by a jury pool that is being pulled from ultra left-wing DC that has capitalitis. You know, you go to DC so you don't have you go live in DC so you don't have to go that far to protest when there's something that the government does that you don't like. They're being tried in DC, which means that they can get railroaded. And there's little that anybody's going to do about it. You can't get a fair trial into something like this in DC. Are you out of your mind? And at that point, too, it's another trap. whether they kill you or not. You're never going to get a fair trial. Alright, but that's what we have for that. And the last one we will do talking on this is kind of a transitory one. From Politico, McCarthy's GOP tries to move on from Tucker Carlson January 6th drama. From Olivia Beavers and Sarah Ferris. Mere hours after Tucker's latest segment minimizing the January 6th selfie fest, House Republicans were eager to change the subject from the Fox News host riot revisionism, the editorialization. Mr. Scott, this was the thing that you were trying to tell the rest of us about, and I already knew. What was it, 2 weeks ago? Where you actually called me objective and it brought a tear to my eye because I am the furthest thing from objective. I am an opinion commentator. But all of these, like your Politicos, your CNNs, your New York Times, The Hill, AP, etc., they're all so editorialized. You know how I would have written that if that was not an editorialized statement? Almost the same, except for change the subject from Fox News' video released. Not riot revisionism. While Carlson continued to roil Washington, many GOP lawmakers who gathered Wednesday morning were celebrating their unexpected win on a bill, rolling back progressive D.C. crime laws and plotting their response to Thursday night's House budget. I don't know if we're going to get down to that one or not, but I do have that on the stack. Carlson didn't come up at all during House Republicans' meeting, according to 4 members in the room who spoke on condition of anonymity. Well, number 1, it's an anonymous source, so take that with a grain of salt. But number 2, even if it's a reliable anonymous source, they've won on this. There is enough reasonable doubt in the narrative that, again, as I pointed out, in any fair courtroom, the judge would be forced to throw it out. And not a single GOP lawmaker asked about it when given the chance to speak. In fact, some members were privately surprised by the amiability of this week's first closed-door huddle, generally because there is usually some drama, but particularly since the Fox News segment has publicly reopened a painful cross-party fissure. Yet Speaker McCarthy's decision to let Carlson air thousands of hours of Capitol footage from the riot has left a lingering cloud over his own leadership team, which was repeatedly pressed about the move as Carlson continues to downplay the violence of the selfie fest by confused supporters of the former president. See, I can pull it editorialized too. Senate Republicans heaped criticism on Tuesday on Carlson's portrayal of the riot, led by unipartyists. But they're eager to get back and talk about the budget and the DC crime bill and things like that. So that's where they are at right now. We're going to move off of this here, talk about some other things. We've got 2 articles, where it started and where it's going, both involving Kevin McCarthy. From CNN. Exclusive. Zelensky invites House Speaker Kevin McCarthy to visit Ukraine. From Claire Ferran. So, what are we thinking? Big bribe? I mean, he's got plenty of money to bribe with. After selling all those weapons on the black market, he's got plenty of money to bribe with. So, what are we thinking? Big bribe? Bunch of cocaine and hookers? Attempt to catch him in a compromising position for blackmail? What are we thinking? Volodymyr Zelensky is inviting House Speaker McCarthy to visit Ukraine to see the situation on the ground firsthand. An invitation that comes as the Republican Party faces a divide over whether the U.S. should continue to provide aid to the country under attack from Russia. Mr. McCarthy, he has to come here to see how we work. That sounds like a statement of where he's about to give a bribe. what is happening here, what war has caused us, which people are fighting now, who we are fighting now, and then, after that, make assumptions. Zelensky told CNN's Wolf Blitzer in an exclusive interview. That's how it started. How it's going from Insider. McCarthy refuses Zelensky's invitation to visit Kiev, reiterating that he's against blank checks for Ukraine. Based. And that's not a word I use for McCarthy very often. But you earned this one. Based. From John Haltewanger. House Speaker McCarthy rejected Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's invitation for him to visit Kiev amid growing concerns over GOP pushback for continued aid to Ukraine. McCarthy has also reiterated that he does not support providing Ukraine with blank checks. Let's be very clear about what I said. No blank checks, okay? So from that perspective, I don't have to go to Ukraine to understand whether there's a blank check or not, McCarthy told CNN on Wednesday. I will continue to get my briefings and others, but I don't have to go to Ukraine or Kiev to see it. And my point has always been, I won't provide a blank check for anything. President Biden recently visited Kiev, and McCarthy's predecessor, Nancy Pelosi, went to the Ukrainian capital last May. They both got their payoff. So, that's good. I'm not opposed to that by any means. On the debt ceiling from Reuters. House Republicans to highlight U.S. debt ahead of Biden budget proposal. From David Morgan. House Republicans plan to focus on the federal government's $31.4 trillion with a T dollar debt in a closed-door meeting on Wednesday, the day before President Biden unveils a 2024 spending plan the White House says will help limit the debt's growth. Yeah, we'll talk about how he proposes to do that. Democrats and Republicans are expected to hear from the director of the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. Nonpartisan, you say, Philip Swagel, who has warned the federal debt will surpass the size of the U.S. economy within the next decade if no steps are taken. I don't think they care, guys. Biden, a Democrat, in case you didn't know that, on Thursday will unveil a plan that's expected to reduce the deficit, the measure of how much more the government spends than it takes in, by $2 trillion over a decade, while extending the life of Medicare, healthcare plan for Americans age 65 and older, and raising taxes on billionaires and other high-income individuals. Republicans are expected to follow up by April 15th and have been eyeing $150 billion in cuts to non-defense discretionary programs for 2024 that would reset spending to fiscal 2022 levels and save $1.5 trillion over a decade by holding spending increases to an annual 1%. You know, if we stopped invading other countries or selling them military aid, then we wouldn't have to have the massive defense budget. Trust me, there's nobody in the world who's out of their mind enough to start a ground invasion in this country. They usually steal planes. The emergence of the two budgets are seen as a starting gun for negotiations between Speaker McCarthy and Biden over the fiscal spending for 2024, which begins on September 1st. The stakes of those talks are elevated this year as the federal government is expected to hit the $31.4 trillion debt ceiling by summer. Failure to act by that time could trigger a potentially disastrous default. McCarthy wants Biden to agree to spending cuts before his narrow Republican House majority would agree to raise the debt ceiling. Biden insists Republicans must agree to a clean debt ceiling increase without a preliminary deal on spending. No, you don't get your way just because you said so. It doesn't matter how much the mainstream media is going to whitewash your role and what happens once we hit the debt ceiling and we default on the debt, which they will, trust me. It doesn't matter how much they're going to whitewash this. You're not calling the shots right now. You don't hold the purse strings. From the USA Today, President Biden's budget proposal will include tax increases. Because of course they will. And by the way, if you think that those are not going to anybody making under $400,000, I have got some nice oceanfront property in Wisconsin that I would love to sell you. Come see me sometime. From Michael Collins. Wealthy Americans will pay higher taxes under the proposed budget that President Biden will send to Congress on Thursday, but Biden says he will keep his promise not to raise taxes on the middle-class Americans. I want to make it clear. I'm going to raise some taxes. However, people making less than $400,000 a year will not pay an additional single penny in any tax, he said. Which is a lie. I'm already paying more in taxes. The budget blueprint will be the first thing that Biden has submitted to the Republican-controlled House, which is unlikely going to go along with his proposal to raise some taxes. Congress is in charge of writing the federal budget, and Biden's spending plan will become the starting point for negotiations between lawmakers and the White House. This year's budget talks will come amid a brewing battle between congressional Republicans and the White House over raising the limit on how much money the federal budget can borrow. House Republicans say they won't raise the debt ceiling unless Biden agrees to sharply cut spending. If Congress doesn't raise the borrowing limit, the U.S. Treasury will run out of money to pay the government bills, such as Social Security and military paychecks, this summer, according to the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. I don't even make anywhere close to $80K, and I can afford a tax accountant who basically sidesteps all of this. It's not that expensive. Biden hasn't offered specifics on his latest plan to raise taxes on the wealthy, because it'll cost him his party. But during his State of the Union address on February, he called on Congress to reward work, not just wealth, and pass his proposal for a billionaire's minimum tax. His so-called billionaire's tax is likely to mirror a proposal that he offered last year. The plan called for a 20% minimum tax on multimillionaires and billionaires, which Biden said would lead to a fairer tax code and would prevent the nation's highest earners from paying a smaller share than the middle-class Americans. Are you stupid? Okay. I guess I know the answer to that question already. Here is the problem. The billionaires that you speak of so much, they don't get an income the way that you and I do. Some of them pay themselves. Bezos is a great example of this. Bezos' salary, his income, is the same as mine. From his, well, actually I don't know now because he retired from Amazon, but when he was in Amazon, Bezos on paper makes the exact same amount of money that I do. Exact same amount of money right now that I do. I'm not going to say what that is, but he makes the exact same amount of money that I do on paper. But because the majority of what he owns, what he does, is tied up in either Amazon or hard assets, such as property or land. Well, property is land. Or buildings or tangible assets for business. Or, yes, yachts. Things like that. He is a billionaire, but he doesn't get $1 billion a year. He just has that much in assets. And he does pay dearly, by the way, if he's got to cash something out to go pay for something. If he's got to sell a hard asset. a piece of property, a house, to go pay for or invest something new, before he can go and invest that money, he gets a capital gains tax on it. Which, by the way, is much, much more than you as the middle class worker pay. But see, they can fudge the numbers back around and just say, oh, well, they pay less in income tax than you do. That's because they have the same income that I do. You moron. The tax would apply to American households with more than $100 million, about 0.01%, representing the 700 richest Americans. It would create an additional $361 billion of tax revenue over the next decade. How? Explain that to me. Because you know what all these people are going to do? They're going to go drop their income, what they pay themselves, to nothing. The push for a billionaire's minimum tax comes amid a debate over the uneven distribution of wealth and whether the rich pay their fair share. In a typical year, billionaires pay an average tax rate of just 8%. According to the White House, a minimum tax would make sure that the wealthiest Americans no longer pay a tax rate lower than teachers and firefighters, Biden said. What are you comparing that to? But, hey, he's going to go back and try to tax more. He'll have a carve-out for his rich buddies, the people who donate to his campaign. There's always going to be a carve-out. It's the same argument I make about federal laws on abortion. Or transgenderism, or transing the kids, or anything else like that. These lawmakers will have a carve-out that will protect them, their families, and their donors from being affected by the law. You, the pleb, will be affected by the law. Their friends will not. Let's talk Breonna Taylor. From the BBC, Breonna Taylor, Louisville police violated civil rights, Justice Department says. From Brandon Dreenan. A Kentucky police department that conducted the botched arm raid in which a hospital worker was killed routinely used excessive force, the Department of Justice review has found. Louisville Metro Police engaged in a pattern of civil rights violations, including unjustified neck restraints and canine attacks, the review said. The investigation following the killing of Breonna Taylor during a chaotic raid in March of 2020. She was hit with 6 bullets. The findings are deeply troubling and sobering, said Associate Attorney General Vanita Gupta. The report found Louisville Metro Police Department used excessive force, including unjustified neck restraints and the unreasonable use of police dogs and tasers. Well, yeah, I'm sure it's excessive use of tasers. Probably so much better off that they pull out their service, 40 off their hip, right? Conducted searches based on invalid warrants. If true, then we do need to address that. But that is a judicial process, not a police process. Unlawfully executed search warrants without knocking and announcing. In spite of the fact that during the Breonna Taylor raid, it was supposed to be a no-knock, unannounced warrant, and they knocked and announced. Unlawfully stopped, searched, and detained arrested people during street enforcement activities, including traffic and pedestrian stops, which is the same as any other police department in this country, and unlawfully discriminated against black people in its enforcement activities. Assistant AG Kristen Clark of the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division said the review demonstrates that Louisville's police and city governments have failed to adequately protect and serve and breached the public's trust. The police sought search warrants without justification and carried out no-knock warrants, unlawfully evading the Constitution, defying federal law, and putting ordinary citizens in harm's way. AG Garland said this conduct is unacceptable. It's heartbreaking. It's also an affront to the vast majority of officers who put their lives on the line to serve Louisville with honor. DOJ blamed the findings on deficiencies in policies, training, supervision, and accountability that contributed to LMPD and Louisville's Metro unlawful conduct. Officials opened their investigation on April 26, 2021. It was just over a year after plainclothes police officers executed a no-knock search warrant, allowing entry without knocking or identification, in which, I remind you, they did both, at Miss Taylor's home, firing 30 shots and hitting her with 6 bullets. The EMT, there's a question about that, by the way, was asleep with her boyfriend when police burst into her apartment. That's also been disproven. Her boyfriend fired once at what he said he believed were intruders. He has since received a $2 million settlement from the city. Miss Taylor's name became a rallying cry during months of racial justice protests around the U.S. in the summer of 2020. Again, hey, here's the reminder of what happened here. Nobody had heard the name Breonna Taylor until 5 weeks after Memorial Day, after the St. George riots had started. She died 2 months before the St. George riots, but nobody had heard a word about her until a little over a month after the St. George riots started. Do I believe the search warrant was wrong? Yes, I do. Do I believe the use of force was wrong? Yes, I do. Do I believe the police did wrong in this situation? Yes, I do. I believe all of these things. But I see blatantly, transparently through what's happening with this, and that is the fact that a political narrative that is starting to come apart at the rails needs to go back and inject racism back into itself to try to get the American people pitted against each other. From WLKY, a rebuttal. Louisville mayor, officials, Breonna Taylor's lawyer all react to DOJ civil rights violation report. From Curdon Powell. Mayor Craig Greenberg spoke during the DOJ's press conference on Wednesday announcing civil rights violations by the Louisville Metro Police Department and city government. Merrick Garland led the announcements, enumerating what they said were several civil rights violations. Our city has wounds that have not yet healed, and that's why the report and this moment are so important, said Greenberg, which we can actually watch. I don't think we're going to. We're up on the clock. He said that he and the chief will do everything possible to heal those wounds. A major part of what will be Louisville's work with the DOJ on implementing 36 remedial improvements made on the report. Pledging reform, Greenberg said, to those people who were harmed, I'm sorry, we can and will do better. Gwyn Villarreal also pledged to enact reforms in the LMPD. Several community members and protesters were outside for the media-only announcement. Many of those at the forefront of the 2020 protests and calling for LMPD reform way before then. Congressman Morgan McGarvey said, I fully support the DOJ's consent decree to collaboratively work with the Louisville Metro Police, and community to begin righting these harmful wrongs. Excessive use of force and racial profiling in the Louisville Metro Police Department will continue to plague our community. Until we take the decisive action to create a true, lasting change, we cannot simply afford to wait. And then, once they get everything back and improved, the community of color will go back and demand more. If you give a mouse a cookie. Former Mayor Greg Fisher released a statement too. He in part said today is another important inflection to honor the pain of 2020 by further acknowledging and continuing to act on The fact that our community deserves a new era of public safety, the era requires the leadership of the many good officers who have dedicated their lives to keep us safe and are committed to working in partnership with the community to develop a new form of constitutionally sound policing embraced by all our city's residents. Well, get rid of like 3/4 of your laws if you want constitutionally sound policing. Look, I thought this was actually going to be a rebuttal. It looks like this is just a big love fest where the mayor and the police chief and everybody else are now embracing their new FBI overlords who are going to come back out and tell them how to be a good federal police department again. In another part of the South, from the Daily Wire, Atlanta police released aerial footage of training center rioters. From Daniel Chaitin. Aerial footage appears to show a crowd of people making their way to the site of the training center for police, firefighters, and EMTs in Atlanta, where a fiery riot took place on Sunday evening. The video, released by the Atlanta Police Department, shows more than 100 individuals walking in large groups before cutting to different, more close-up camera shots of the chaotic moments during what officials are describing as a domestic terrorism attack. Rounding out the 4 minutes and 12 seconds of footage is more video from above showing a smaller group of individuals in a forested area appearing to change their clothes. Let's watch. There's no sound in this video. But yep, there they all come. They're running, they're running. As usual, my disclaimer for all of this is the fact that I don't particularly agree with excessive and extra policing, because there are, in general, just too many laws, plain and simple. But I also recognize that I am not the only, I don't live in this community at all, but I'm also not the only person in the community that I'm in. Which means, this is important, the community decides on what they want for policing. The community of Atlanta, the state of Georgia, and the counties that this encompasses agreed together that they wanted this. For whatever reason that they did, whether it be to have a safer community, better practices in policing, and a more articulated response for when there's actually violence that requires police. But these communities in Georgia decided that they wanted this. And now we have people from out of state coming in and trying to shut it down. And it is from people from out of state. In fact, in the first round of arrests, there were only 2 people from Georgia that were in the round of arrests. Period. From Fox 5, most protesters arrested during Atlanta public safety training riot denied bond. From Deidre Dukes and Fox 5 Atlanta Digital Team. The 23 people arrested during a violent clash with police at the site of the future Atlanta Public Safety Training Center, nicknamed Cop City by critics, sat before a judge for the first time on Tuesday. Only one person was granted bond. This first appearance took place via video conference. A representative with the Public Defender's Office told Magistrate Court Judge Anna Davis that they were all represented by private attorneys, which may lengthen the process. Which, again, a lot of their private attorneys are probably coming from out of state. The representative with the public, this group changed their clothing into blackout clothing. They had shields that were like riot-type shields, homemade shields. They had bags of rocks, they had fireworks, they had Molotovs. The Chief Assistant DA, Peter Johnson. Johnson spelled out the allegations against the defendants, saying they were reportedly a part of the group of about 100 agitators that attacked police Sunday at the site. Rioters carried shields and were armed with explosives and projectiles as they launched a coordinated attack. Meanwhile, defense attorneys argued that the domestic terrorism charges were an overreach and asked the judge to grant bond. Ooh, that sounds good. I had Quick Trip burger for dinner and a salad because I forgot to take something out before work today. So I'm like, no matter what, like I can take something out while we're doing the show, but it's still going to take me an hour to cook. We'll just go back and it probably won't thaw in that hour, so we'll just grab something from Quick Trip and go from there. And I'll take something out tonight to make sure. Meanwhile, the defense attorneys argued that what kind of steak, by the way? What cut? Meanwhile, the defense attorneys argued that the domestic terrorism charges were an overreach and asked the judge to grant bond. When it comes down to the allegations against Mr. Bilodeau specifically, it says the accused was observed with muddy clothing from breaching and crossing the embankment. Accused was also in possession with a shield, so there's no allegation that he was personally observed throwing a rock or a firework or anything like that. It's more akin to a criminal trespass allegation, said defense attorney Amanda Clark Palmer. Her client, Timothy Bilodeau, was said to have come from Massachusetts to participate. Holy crap, he cruised state lines! He cruised! He cruised to go back and commit terrorism! Oh wait, no, we don't care about that if it's the left. It's only if it's an evil right-wing 17-year-old. That's the only time we care about that. Ooh, ribeye. Ribeye is good. I like eating a ribeye for cheesesteak. Some of the lawyers read letters from character witnesses and had the suspect's family members and acquaintances standing by to testify on their client's behalf. I think the world of Tim. He's not only a good carpenter, a good farmer and gardener, he's also an excellent human being, one man told the court on behalf of Bilodeau, who he cruised state lines and traveled for hours, literally hours. It's 12 hours to get from DC to Orlando.
Good.
And I gotta say, it's probably gonna be about the same to get from Mass, probably just about anywhere in Mass, to Atlanta. Let's check. We'll go with Worcester as our starting point. No, I don't want to fly. I want to drive. Oh no, it's more. It is, if you drive, it is almost 16 hours, 15 hours and 58 minutes going straight through by I-85 South to go from Worcester to Atlanta. They don't show it on the map even. Don't they usually show the route? Or is Google Maps having problems? Is that what we're doing? so you can see what I'm looking at. Yeah, they didn't put the route on there, but yeah, best 16 hours. By Metro, it takes a day. If you want to walk from Worcester to Atlanta, it takes 14 days. Bicycle, 4 days. You can even take a plane, and that probably takes about 3 hours. If you manage to get a nonstop. One of the initial defendants called. None of them had a criminal history, but the judge still denied bond due to the seriousness of the charge and the fact that they were going after the state. The lack of criminal history and good character is part of the equation, but based on the allegations before the court at this time, I'm going to deny bond and find that there is a significant risk of danger to persons and property of this community at this stage in the case, the judge said. And by the way, one other thing to point out is, given the fact that so many of them are from out of state, they're all a flight risk. And they could all go back to their home states and wonder whether or not their home states will export them back. Export is not the word. I can't think of the word. Extradite. Extradite them back to Georgia for their trial. So yes, there's the seriousness of the charge, the fact that many of them came from miles around with the intent to commit violence, and then extradition between the states that they would be going back to. That's a big recipe for no bond right there. I don't eat a lot of steak anymore. I should eat more. It's really good for you. All right. And when we see where the government that is employing you has turned its back on you, when you're assaulted for just being a police officer and being at a training ground, why wouldn't you quit? And that's a serious question from the New York Post. Cops quit Austin in droves, plunging Texas City into crisis. If you're conservative, it's a hostile place. Well, get out of there. Texas's woke capital, Austin, is in the midst of a policing crisis with over 300 vacancies and cops quitting because they feel disrespected. Multiple sources tell the Post. We're right there with Portland and Seattle and San Francisco as being one of those places where if you're at all conservative or in law enforcement, it's become a hostile place. Lieutenant Brian Moon, who retired last month, told the Post of the city he protected for 23 years. Another 77 officers are expected to retire before the end of March, on top of the 264 existing vacancies, according to the Austin Police Association. I eat a lot of beef, just not steak, not in steak form. I eat a lot of burgers. That's my thing. With or without a bun, I eat a lot of burgers. One of the local grocery stores where I used to live occasionally would have filet burgers, which were fantastic. A little bit tricky to cook because they cooked too fast. They cooked faster than a filet did, and they cooked faster than a similar chuck ground burger. So you couldn't, it was harder to get, unless you had practice with it, it was really hard to get that perfect medium rare out of them. Another 77 officers are expected to retire before the end of March, on top of 264 existing vacancies, according to the Austin Police Association. Austin Police Department staffing is so bad, 911 calls are being redirected to the 311 non-emergency number because there aren't enough cops to solve crimes. If you come home and find your home burglarized, calls like that are now going to 311. said Police Union President Thomas Villarreal. You're not getting a police response into many property crimes if it's not violent crime that's currently ongoing. Well, in all fairness, if it's not ongoing, it should be going to 311. That would help a lot of things. If they went, because, I mean, if it's already after the fact, if you came home and found your window smashed out and nobody in your house, that's a non-emergency. It sucks, it blows. But that's a non-emergency. Bison, that does cook well. I haven't had bison in forever. The Beleaguer Department has also pulled detectives from solving cases to act as patrol officers, Senior Police Officer Justin Berry revealed to the Post. Again, if this is what your government is going to do to you, which swore to keep you employed and protect you from the masses with things like qualified immunity, and they're not doing that anymore, why would you stick around? Why would you put your life on the line for a community that hates you? I wouldn't. Plain and simple, I wouldn't. Alright, I think that we are just about done. Now let's do this one about Mexico here. And then we will have pretty much all government officials behaving badly to go with for tomorrow. But we started a little bit late, so we'll go for a little bit longer yet. Let's talk about Mexico. From the Associated Press, what we know about the 4 Americans kidnapped in Mexico. From Alfredo Peña and Matthew Barakat. Four Americans who traveled to Mexico last week to seek healthcare got caught in a deadly shootout and were kidnapped by heavily armed men who threw them in the back of a pickup truck, officials from both countries said on Monday. The 4 were traveling in a white minivan with North Carolina plates. They came under fire shortly after entering the city of Matamoros from Brownsville, at the southernmost tip of Texas near the Gulf Coast, the FBI said in a statement on Sunday. All 4 Americans were placed in a vehicle and taken from the scene by armed men. The Bureau is offering a $50,000 reward for the victim's return and arrest of the kidnappers. That's a ransom, not a reward. Zalandria Brown of Florence, South Carolina, said she has been in contact with the FBI and local officials after learning that her younger brother, Zindell Brown, is one of the 4 victims. This is like a bad dream you wish you could wake up from, she said in a phone interview. To see a member of your family thrown in the back of a truck and dragged, it's just unbelievable. No, I don't know that one. Zalandria said her brother, who lives in Myrtle Beach, and 2 friends had accompanied a 3rd friend who was going to Mexico for a tummy tuck. A doctor who advertises such surgeries in Matamoros did not answer calls seeking comment. Brown said the group was extremely close, and they all made the trip in part to help split up driving duties. They were aware of the dangers in Mexico, she added, and her brother had expressed some misgivings. Zindell kept saying, "We shouldn't go down," Brown said. A video posted to social media Friday showed men with assault rifles and tan body armor loading 4 people into the bed of a white pickup in broad daylight. One was alive and sitting up, but the others seemed to be either dead or wounded. At least one person appeared to lift his head from the pavement before being dragged to the truck. The scene illustrates the terror that has prevailed for years in Matamoros, a city dominated by factions of the powerful Gulf drug cartel, who often fight among themselves. Amid the violence, thousands of Mexicans have dispersed in Tamaulipas state alone. Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador said on Monday it was a confrontation between groups and they were detained. Without offering details, he originally said 4 Americans came to Mexico to buy medications. So that's what we know, but unfortunately we have lost 2 of them. And yes, Zindell was one of the 2. From the New York Post, American tourists killed after being kidnapped in Mexico ID'd as Shaid Woodard and Zindell Brown. from Haley Brown, Olivia Land, and Ben Kesslin. The two Americans were found dead in Mexico after being kidnapped at gunpoint during a terrifying shootout between rival cartel gangs were identified Tuesday as Shaeed Woodard and Zindel Brown. Woodard and Brown traveled from South Carolina to Mexico with Latavia Tay McGee and Eric James Williams, so McGee, a mother of 6, could undergo a tummy tuck procedure, relatives said. But shortly after the foursome crossed the border Friday into the crime-ridden city of Matamoros, located in the northeastern state of Tamaulipas, realized they were lost. The group couldn't find the doctor's office where McGee was due for surgery on Friday, CNN reported, and poor cell service in the region made it harder for them to communicate with the doctor's office. While trying to sort out their location, the four became caught in the middle of a violent cartel showdown. Harrowing video of the shootout shows the moment the group was forced into the back of a pickup in broad daylight after being shot at. Tamaulipas State Chief Prosecutor Irving Barrios said he believes the deadly ambush was a result of confusion, not a direct attack. Matamoros' sinister reputation for ruthless organized crime had led to an initial speculation that the abduction was drug-related, but a source close to the investigation told the Dallas Morning News that Monday that the Americans may have been mistaken for Haitian smugglers. McGee and Williams survived the attack and were rushed Tuesday to Brownsville, Texas in a convoy of ambulances and SUVs, escorted by the Mexican military, Humvees, and National Guard trucks with mounted 50 caliber machine guns. Hi, can I get one of those? Please? I promise I'll only use it for defense. Williams was shot in the left leg, but the wound was not life-threatening, Tamaulipas Governor Americo Villarreal said. McGee survived the ordeal without physical injuries. Local authorities will examine the bodies of Woodard and Brown before they're repatriated to the U.S., the governor added. So, we lost 2. This should be a major international incident. Unfortunately, it's not going to be. And a lot of this is going to get swept under the rug. And with that, I think we might be done. Before we head out of here, though, the last thing that I do, always, is I reflect on things that restore my faith in humanity, things that I am thankful for. And, you know, there's always a lot out there. I cite my move a lot. It's still new. It's very new to me at this point. I cite it a lot. I talk about it a lot. Because I still look back and I think that I made the best decision for myself. One of the things that I bring up when I talk about that is the fact that I'm close to family. I just spent 2 weekends in a row in my home county. Not my hometown. Well, I passed through my hometown, I guess, but in my home county. And in both of them, there were instances where it felt like I needed to be there. I talked a bit about a medical situation that my dad had last weekend. Not this past weekend, the weekend before. That it was so important for me to be there because of the situation that was at the house at the time. And I'm thankful for the fact that I was able to be there and serve my family as needed. Serve and protect as needed. And then on a bit of a happier note, the immediate next weekend, I had to go back and go to work over the weekend because I work occasional Saturdays where I work now. But I got done with that, came home, did a rocking video game stream. Thank you guys so much for making that awesome, by the way. Making my return to video gaming awesome. We had a few lurkers that day, but definitely had an awesome return to video gaming. And then got up the next morning, gave my nephew my old Game Boy. My nephew loves Pokemon, so he got my old Game Boy. But because there was not a cartridge to be found, I did have to eBay in him a couple of cartridges of Pokemon. He's got an old copy of Mario Land 2, so he can practice with the Game Boy, but he's got a couple carts going there. But again, the fact is that I would have had to budget and run and wonder whether or not I could make it if this had been where I was before. I mean, it took, from where I was living before to get to my mom and dad's house, it took almost a full tank of gas, which is 33 gallons, by the way, to make the trip once. And under Bidenomics, that's a lot of dollar bills. But one of the things that's really restored my faith in myself, as well as my faith in humanity, is the fact that in spite of so many people that are losing out on so much, the people that are getting laid off, the people who are stuck in wages for inflation, I was able to improve on myself. I had commented when I went in to pay rent, because I'm still paying rent to live in a closet while I'm looking for a house right now. And, you know, kind of holding off on the house, just waiting to see if the market comes down a little bit, or the interest rates. But I had commented to the girl that took the check, and I said, you know, I don't even have to go in and check my bank account right now to know that I can cover this check. I did, because I spent a lot of time poor, but like, I didn't have to. I knew that the money was there to go cover that one. For one of the first times in a very, very long time, it, I guess, wasn't so bad. Like when I first moved jobs to be closer to where I was living. At that time, because I was making more or less the equivalent of what I'm making now when adjusted for inflation, and paying for rent more or less what I'm paying now while adjusted for inflation. I'm making just maybe a little bit more because there's some overtime offered now. But just the feeling that I could walk in, say, hey, here's the full amount, no questions asked, because I know it's all there, without even have to worrying about it. That is a massive relief off my shoulders that I honestly didn't think that I was ever going to get again. I thought I was, when the inflation started eating away at my ability to save, I thought that this was going to be Kenosha all over again, and it was going to be the rest of my life. And the rest of my life was just going to be, I'm poor, I'm poor, I'm poor, I'm poor. Nothing's ever going to go right for me. I'm poor, I'm poor. But realistically, when you don't like your situation, change it. There's no sense in sitting and complaining about it. Do more, learn another skill. Maybe look in a different market. Your job may be in demand in a completely different market. That's something I could not impress on myself when I lived in Kenosha, because I just felt that I had to live in Kenosha all the time. One of the things I'm most thankful for is the fact that that thought got out of my head. And even with now being closer to family, there are talks that might put me in another market sooner than later. Something's come up in my life that might change where I live again in the very near future. No details, because of course it's very much up in the air right now. But something that I didn't think was going to be there. In fact, something that was talked about at the time was my mom. I love my mom, I do. But she did try to guilt trip me into, when I was talking about maybe going further south or going, I was actually, when I lived where I used to live, was talking about going back to the East Coast, going back to Boston. And my mom had pointed out, it says, you barely see your nephews and nieces now. What do you think that's going to do to your relationship with them? And I just kept thinking to myself, I'm not making it right now. I'm not holding my head above water, and there are jobs out there, and there are not people to take those jobs. This was before the labor force shortage started off after the Pinko Pox. This was, I think, 2018, actually, because it was before I moved into the last place I lived in, but after my ex and I broke up. So while we were still locked in a lease together, but broken up. But now, with the conversation I'd had, one of the things that I didn't reveal at the time was I was actually looking at both Orlando and Atlanta before I found the job that I have now. And there's an understanding to that. My mom understanding the fact that there's some markets out there that are desperate enough for my kind of work that I can make a mediocre living and even a halfway decent living here, or go make a fortune somewhere else. So, options are something that I did not have for a very long time in my life. I have them now. And furthermore, one of the things that has been brought up to me before in just the recent days is the fact that there are people who, part of the reason that I'm here right now is because while my direct supervisor would fight to keep me working with him, corporate wouldn't allow that to happen. Whereas corporate now has made it point blank clear that they would fight to keep me. I've carried that kind of work ethic with me. So that's what I'm thankful for. That's what I'm happy about. That's what restores my faith in humanity. All right, let's get out of here. Instagram didn't shut down. That's interesting. I wonder if they changed their time limits again. Because I know that for a while they would let me go for the entire stream, but then when I came back, because I didn't do Instagram for a while because there wasn't an audience enough for it. I didn't do Instagram for a while, but I started doing it again and I had an hour limit, and today we just went for the entire stream on Instagram. So they're over there. Hi, Instagram people. Both seeing this now live and on the replay. But with that, we're going to head out of here for the day. Thank you everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat. We had a good one, including Midget B from the Porch Boys coming in and giving us colorful commentary about what was happening with the January 6th committee and Tucker Carlson. That was an awesome time. I do like to see Midget B in the comment section, which is, again, unless I'm in a situation like New Vegas where I will definitely get dinged for copyright for the music that's on there. I do want to go on YouTube because I know that he won't use Twitch, and for whatever reason he doesn't go on DLive either. But anyway, we're going to head out of here for the day. Thank you everybody for coming by. Stick around if you're on the Twitch side. We're going to go find somebody to raid. Otherwise, be back here tomorrow at 6. And I'm going to try to get out of work on time, so we're not doing it at 6:10 again. But come back here. So we are here at 6 tomorrow to go back and talk about more news, more headlines. We will see what happens in the next 22 hours and hopefully knock down some of this government officials behaving badly lineup that we have over here. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing you guys here some more. And until tomorrow, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.